Welcome to Partner Point of View, where we sit down with PTC partners and discuss how together we innovate, collaborate, and unlock power by the convergence of physical and digital worlds.
Welcome back, everybody. It's me, Wolfie, with my colleague, Andreas. Welcome back, Andy.
Welcome. Nice to be with you again. Thank you.
I mean, what a treat to be joined in the studio today by our friend from Accenture Industry X, Amarnath Bharadwaj. I've had to practice pronouncing your name, so please help me say it correctly.
Yeah, Amarnath Bharadwaj.
Bharadwaj.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wolfie. Thank you, Andreas. Nice to be here.
We've shared a meal. I know you're a free spirit. How did a nice guy like you end up in such a tightly constrained environment as the software-defined vehicle market?
Yeah. First of all, thank you. And it's great to be here with my PTC friends, Wolfie and Andrea. From my younger days, I've always been amazed with the speed of vehicle. Right? I love to get the air in my hair, which I had not when I was young. Probably I did a lot of speed, so everything vanished. But I think as I grew up and started liking driving the cars, I started understanding the importance of connection to customer needs, and probably the happiness I saw in my kid when she was very young, sitting in the car and the music would come or she would see a movie. I think that's where my fascination to the software and the vehicles became a transition from mechanical to the software world.
So even as a mechanical engineer, you loved the thrill of driving.
I loved it. I still love it.
Still love it. So let me ask you, what are the challenges that arise for OEMs and their tier one suppliers when the tech stack's not sufficient to meet the passionate requirements of drivers like you?
Oh, that's a very important question. And with Andreas and you, Shomit and David Rush, my colleague, spoke some portion of it. What's important is every company is looking at how do we enable customer experience faster and better, right? That's where everything is starting. The hardware-oriented architecture, which was focused on making vehicles better, is shifted from the vehicle focus to consumer focus. That's where the software-based architecture has come in place. When you look at that complexity, the tools that was required to enable those with speed, acceleration, and also the end-to-end traceability is not providing that support, right? And that's where I love PTC's Codebeamer. In fact, it is one of the tools that I always recommend even to the other partners that I work with. We are partner agnostics. I allow this tool to look at how do we enable this across all the tool sets they have, because of the ease of use in templates and how it enables the companies to look from requirements through the software till it even gets out of the plant, right? So the difficulties the OEMs and the tier ones are facing is about understanding how do we enable those end-to-end traceability? How do we make sure that what the engineers thought or the chief engineers thought gets out of the vehicle? But then it is also important is how do we keep this scalable and integrated moving forward? Because it's not a once in a lifetime done, right? Andreas, you and I spoke a couple of times. I would like to hear your thoughts as well on that.
Yes, absolutely. It's about, as you say, Amarnath, about enabling, and I would augment it like, how do we ensure that this enabling has some elasticity? Yeah. And elasticity means if it's needed to have a constrained, very tight process, Codebeamer can do it. But if you want in a process and in a workflow more flexibility, you can easily with Codebeamer adjust to the needs of, let's say, the corresponding project, department, application in terms of, constraints or freedom you want to give for the development innovation. Yeah. And this is just one element. We are going a little bit into the kind of product capability, area now. But this is one element, I think, which is also very important for the partnership with Accenture, because at the end, PTC is very much relying on, world-class industries, SIs like Accenture to actually do the journey together with our customers. Yeah. And having a capable rollout partner with global reach, with very strong, let's say, automotive understanding in terms of industry understanding, but also software-defined vehicle knowledge and capabilities and industry expertise. This is essential. Yeah, for every, let's say, or before every final large decision about Codebeamer, and fortunately we get a lot of positive decisions and marketing momentum, a key question of our OEMs or tier ones are, who is your rollout partner? And since we have a very strong partnership with Accenture, it's a good comfort, level to be able to actually point to this partnership and knowing that we have a good mutual alignment about what is needed for customer success.
Yeah, Ulfi, I want to add a point to that is when we look at the automotive sector as such, right, the environment has become complex. So we have the SOC providers, we have the tier ones, tier twos, then you have the OEMs, plus you also have dealers, then you have the aftermarket, right? So the software-defined thought process doesn't just stop at creating a vehicle. It also moves on into your after-sales dealership and how that relationship continues till you have the vehicle on the road. That creates an environment for us to think, how do we make sure that all of these partners are connected? How do we make sure that what we thought as a requirements is not lost in translation between these portions? And that's where we need to have the right tools like Codebeamer in place, but also make sure that it is well architected. Right? It's not just you take a tool, put it in the tool stack and say, oh, now I have Codebeamer. Okay, so have you used the full potential of it? Have you made sure that each of these partners are able to see it, engage with it, and keep it live so that it continues to make the productivity and efficiency to the software world?
So if I may, I'd love to ask you maybe a controversial question. You talked about the dealer networks and the requirements for supporting these complex machines on the road for their full life cycle. Are software-defined vehicles going to require a dealer channel and a maintenance facility in the future, in your opinion?
That's a very interesting question, right? What is happening is when all the OEMs are thinking of this new architecture, right? They want to keep it. Most of them are also thinking how Tesla is thinking. We should give credit to Elon Musk and his team because they brought a completely different thinking. They said you can have or design hardware in the vehicle and then continue to build softwares on a regular basis. I mean, you drive Tesla, I drive Tesla, and we've seen how many over-the-air updates come. It's almost like iPhone. And if there is a mistake, you give feedbacks on Instagram, Facebook, somewhere, they read it, and the next week you've got an upgrade, right? So if you think that way, the vehicles that are old enough, which is in the market, there is a space where somebody else takes over and says, okay, OEMs, you don't have to worry about your older models. We'll manage it, right? We have a method, and in fact, Accenture does that part, right? We do have operations as a service. We can completely take over all the older radios, all the older models and run through it, right? We have got a model for that. But I'm sure there are others who are in the aftermarket. Even the dealers could say, don't worry about it. I've got a partner, will take care of it. The vehicles come in and they completely focus the OEMs on the future tech. I think that's a very important question, but hopefully that answer resonates with the industry.
Well, time will tell. Andreas, you've spoken about elasticity. We've spoken in our series about the need for agility and that software-defined sense of agility. But regulations and industry standards are firming up. They're not completely static. They're somewhat of a moving target. Talk to me about how the companies you work with are understanding, updating their processes and systems to meet today's regulatory requirements and prepare for tomorrow's.
Actually, this is a very good question because the regulation is they need to be obviously respected. They are key in order to meet your SOP requirements and get certificates in different markets. But there are thousands of documents which need to be considered in case an OEM is working is playing globally, because you need to look at Brazil, US, China, Europe, and so on. So our approach really with partners is you can only manage this with a high level of automation. If you if you trace the regulations manually, and it's not going to work. Yeah, you need a tool like Codebeamer, where there's kind of a single source of truth. But coming back to the regulations, I want to name a partner called Certivity. Yeah? Certivity is doing nothing else. It's a startup in Germany, but Certivity is doing nothing else than it's kind of a global listener. Yeah? It's a global listener of all regulations. If there's a new ISO regulation or out of a local market, it verifies and says, do we have this regulation already in our, let's say, existing database? And if not, it needs to be updated. And it is integrated with Codebeamer, and you get an alert in Codebeamer. Yeah? So with this kind of integration, automation, you're actually able to keep pace with that level of information and, let's say, global, let's say, impacts on your development and your requirements. Because at the end of the day, a regulation is influencing your requirements, because you need to respect your regulation. Yeah? So in a nutshell, it's not getting less, it's getting more, but it can be managed through smart tools, automation, and in the future, even more with Gen AI. Yeah? So I personally believe Gen AI will even move the level of automation up to a higher level. And with that, it can be managed. Yeah, that's you, and we have experience with that. I used the example of the startup Certivity, which is quite interesting to learn that there's a marketplace for such a service. Yeah, but the market, the need is there because of huge amount of regulations which need to be respected. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy, Andreas, there. So what I would like to add to that is there are regulations, there are requirements which flows from the government bodies to the OEMs, and then that gets percolated to the tier ones. And what Codebeamer has enabled is the templatization of those regulations, whether it is cybersecurity for HARA and TARA, whether it is functional safety. Then you also got the compliances for ISPICE 4.0, right? All the 16 plans there. How it enables the software world to become more efficient is when every engineer is writing the requirements. Because we also have to be honest that not all engineers who are hired come with complete experience of writing requirements. They need the right prompts, they need the right questions to be asked, templates to fill. And that's how these collaboration help. And having an application life management tool, and which I totally agree with Andrea, is if we build Gen AI on top of it, right, every prompt is enabled. Because you need to look at requirements from two angles. One is the customer experience, then you have the regulations to cover, and also enable how does this requirements flow down to low-level requirements with the tier 1s, 2s, and the SOCs that goes in. Because this connectivity is what helps somebody to create the software faster. Because we deal with both OEMs and tier 1s. We sometimes have looked at the requirements of like, is it really the requirements that, the tier 1s, or we would build a software on top of? So that's an important analogy there, Andreas.
Let me pick your brain a little bit. In your role with Industry X as the North American expert on software-defined vehicles, you're working with America's top automotive companies. Maybe you could share some of the concerns that they have and some of the questions that they're asking you to help them address.
Yeah, I think everybody is grappling with the idea of how do we transform from the hardware tech world to a software defined vehicle world. They are doing pretty good job, right? By themselves, they've started understanding the transformation to the next level is very important, which is very appreciative. But what they've also realized is putting thousands and thousands of people in different locations is not going to just get them faster, right? They have to work smarter. They've started realizing they need to bring the right partners in, the many great partners. But this partnership we are looking between Accenture and PTC Codebeamer is adding that edge. Now, if I think about your question a little bit deeply, Wolfie, is there are legacy mindsets within the organization, right? Which the change management is always tough. because you've been doing it for a very long time. Now we are saying, oh, make a change. It's not easy. Some of them have realized that, okay, we need to put a wall between the old organization and new, and they started a new generation of engineers and minds to go. And that is not easy, right? Because you need to get a lot more speed in it, and they're struggling with that. And some of them said, okay, I'm going to just get 3,000, 5,000 engineers in, and it's going to happen. It still doesn't happen, right? So the transformation at organization level, the methods and tools, and also how do we implement it right is, there's some of them have worked well. We are partnering with some of the large OEMs and tier ones, right? I mean, with PTC and few other ecosystem partners, it's a long journey, and I'm seeing the progress is being made, but I think we have to intelligently transform with right process and make it quick. I call it something like minimum viable product experimentations, which is experiment of Accenture. I think that's where the OEMs and the tier one should do it faster. Do fast, fail fast.
So you're helping them get their toe in the water to get started, as opposed to a big bang event.
Exactly. Big bang event was good at some point, but if you want to really understand how quickly transformation happens, you need to do it, like the Scrum Agile, right? Transformation is very much the same.
Andreas, you've experienced the requirements for organizational change management along with forming up an excellent tech stack. Maybe you could share some of your firsthand perspectives and allude to the cultural changes that Amar was talking about.
As Amar had mentioned, there's the legacy. Legacy is linked to organizational responsibilities, positions, power, budget, headcount. What is required and essential for changing to an agile organization is the following: to actually center teams around value creation. And the value creation in an agile manner is different compared to waterfall. What's the difference? Waterfall means you have multiple teams, you have certain special capabilities, and after one team is ready, it hands over the work to the next and the next and the next, and at the end there is ideally a good product coming out. Yeah? Agile is totally different, because Agile basically, in a nutshell, you say, what kind of value is the team supposed to create, and which team members and with which capabilities and expertise you need in order to deliver that value. Yeah? You have very often multidisciplinary teams which are able, as a team together, to create a value increment. Yeah? And this has a lot of impact in the way you actually build up your organization. But what is key and essential, because if customers ask me, but Andy, how do we start and so on? It's just like with every successful company. A successful company looks like, what are the challenges and the needs of our customers? Yeah, and how do we set priorities in order to fulfill and to provide value in order to satisfy those needs? Yeah, and this is my recommendation in terms of how you change your organization. Yeah, this clear. Then you need also, as already discussed earlier, you need to have the complete agile business fabric. Yeah, from a kind of a scaled agile framework. Yeah, starting from a portfolio, but again, the let's say complexity simplification is ask which value is delivered by the team and how do we deliver fast value increment, and whom do we need with which capability.
Well, it's certainly helpful when you're starting out on a big journey to have the support of a Sherpa who's seen it before and taken people on that trip. Talk to me a little bit about how the traditional Accenture capabilities around helping organizations embrace change, go through organizational change management, embrace agile methodologies, how that traditional part of Accenture is underpinning the innovation that Industry X is bringing to the industry.
Yeah. So if we look at where the industry is moving, they all want to make sure that there's a predictability to customer experience, right? If we drive the vehicles, if we see something needs to happen, we'll say, oh, should I buy a new car? Can this, if there was a way to upgrade this, right? So that's where the software-defined vehicle transformation came in. So there is one is the prediction to when do we give the next customer experience, which is very important, right? So the line of end-to-end linkage comes in place. The Accenture enablement came in is we started looking at in two ways. One is the technology enablement. Then the one is how is this technology enablement taking towards our partnership with PTC and other ecosystem players? And then how do we connect to customer experience? And that is when the adaptation of shift left came in place, right? So what do we mean by shift left is with the software-defined vehicle, you cannot wait for every components from every tier one and the SOC to come in. So you cannot wait for the people who provide your hills and the vehicle, modifications to happen. Then your old cycle is 2 to 3 years. They want to crunch it down to 18 months. So if we have to do that, bring the whole development, verification, validation completely to a virtual world, right? For that needs to happen, Accenture started working with multiple ecosystem partners, including PTC Codebeamer. Because when we put this in place, we have already got some demos. This enables the complete test, verification, validation, development for different SOCs, for different features and programs. And that is where, David Rush and Andreas earlier spoke of systems, right? Having that connected through a communication protocol is where the technology enablement happens, right? For us as Accenture, we did acquisitions of multiple different companies across the globe who looks at a lower layer of softwares, looks at the cloud and also the middle layers. And then we said, okay, who's our right partners to go and talk about the right tools to come in? PTC Codebeamer fits it very well. I call the T model. A T model is where the Codebeamer goes much deeper into connecting every requirements end to end, keep the traceability, templatized, and it also has the ability to sit on top of an environment. I call it as an enterprise eye view, right? So the software KPI tower, which most of the tier ones and OEMs seldom think as a silo piece, right? Oh, I've got my department, I've got all these tools, the team is working, and I've got my metrics. Great. What about your entire software enterprise architecture team? Do you have a clear view of how each pods are running the software? How many tests are done? Do you have connection to your test cases to the error that comes in? Do you have a feedback of your dealers running through those systems, coming back to your requirements? And that's where Codebeamer can play a role, right? So it has I call it ALM++, right? So it has got a beautiful connection as a T model. So that's my view of how Accenture's Industry X mixes both the engineering aspect, the after sales, and the manufacturing, because you need to have a much broader view around it.
Well, David Rush was talking about his love for the Aston Martin because it's just a beautiful piece of machinery. We can't forget that with all of this software, it's really being resident and housed inside a piece of physical hardware. And so when you talk about providing abstraction across the software contributors, we also have to take information from traditional CAD that may be resident in a PLM system and incorporate the convergence of hardware engineering with software engineering. You see a role for Codebeamer in that area.
It does. Integration of data set is very important, right? End of the day, it is all about looking at the data and making right decisions for the right outcome. And the Codebeamer has a great integration, not just within the PLM suite of tools, but it also has a great integration with the other ecosystem partners that you could also be working with, right? Because no OEM today would say that I need all PLM, right? I know all PTC or all Siemens, Dassault, or there are many others. They would pick and choose what best they feel is right for their ecosystem because it's a legacy connection. And that's probably the advantage you have. Right? You have the advantage of it doesn't matter what left and right systems you have. The integration that you can bring with the T model I spoke of is a great enabler there, because ultimately you need to connect every world of manufacturing within the OEM, that is your mechanical to your after sales to your software, so that you have the right bill of materials going out. Because end of the day, software can be early, but if everything else is late, it still doesn't work, right? So it has a great play there.
Andreas, you've joined the PTC world and you're learning to play with makers of CAD software, PLM software made by PTC and made by others. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about how these domains are converging along what we call the digital thread.
Yes, I will do my best. So we talked about traceability, and it was not explicit, but probably it was traceability in a narrower sense. In a narrower sense means software architecture requirements or software requirements, architecture requirements down to the source code, and you link it to the test, which is called horizontal traceability, and from the requirement down to the source code, vertical traceability, because you want to understand which source code fulfills which requirement. What is very important in automotive is actually system traceability. And Wolfie, that brings me to your question. System traceability means that you're not only having traceability for the core ECUs and like cloud-based, cloud-centric, powerful central computing units you have with SDV architecture. You want to have traceability for the complete cyber physical system. A modern mobility device or automobile is basically a cyber physical system, and this is where really digital thread from PTC comes into, because ideally you want to also know what was the requirement for a certain mechanical part, which was created in Creo, and you want to understand in windshield what is the part number, and which part number it has, So you are differentiating between engineering bond, manufacturing bond, and then now with the software-defined vehicle, you want the e-bond, the software bond actually, the software bond, sorry. And this is what where the kind of the whole thing comes together, And we are working very intensively. Actually, the integration between windshield and Codebeamer is already working, because for system traceability, just to stick to this with kind of simple example, you can create a part, a mechanical part in Creo. You have the requirement in Codebeamer, and you know exactly where it was tested. This was probably a mechanical test, with a physical part, maybe at first simulated, before it was physically built, and it's all put together. So this is just kind of a reduced view, but one example for the system traceability, where obviously PTC has a nice offering. And one more element I would like to add is you have a very high probability variance of this, because certain parts, either software capabilities or mechanical parts, are built in different variants, which are maybe different in just in nuances, but you want to know which variants are actually possible to combine, And this is where kind of pure variant management brings, the software part, where you can manage software variants, but also hardware variants, together. So you have this full system traceability, and then with you have kind of a product line engineering capability, which you get.
I would like to add a point there, Wolfie. The companies that we engage with, when they are transforming their organizations, they're looking at a couple of elements, right? Number one, they're looking at how do we automate the entire DevOps systems, right? CI/CD DevOps, which goes, we call it a CI/CD, and then you also have the over-the-air updates that come in. So if you look at the ecosystem, everything starts from your customer experience, who's the driver of the vehicle. Then it goes into the architecture that you laid out within your vehicle, includes your cloud, and then you have the GenAI analytics, because the ADAS systems bring so much of data. When you look at that, each of these environmental, what I call the noise factors, because you need to control them, you need to think about how do I capture the right KPIs for each of them. So if I'm creating a transformational organization, they have to think much broader. And that's where our elements of connecting end-to-end systems makes play for them. The other problem that I'm seeing the industry is grappling about is they have still, with all this transformation, multiple departments for architecture, you've got software, then you have your captive centers, then you have your service partners like us, and then you have tech partners like you and the others. How do they bring everyone together? Right. So I think that's where PTC and Accenture are working to help customers. How do we help them transform? But start seeing from a much larger picture, right? So that I think is going to be very key for us to address.
Amar, if you allow me just to jump in, I fully agree with you. Actually, besides obviously the tool infrastructure and all the capabilities, we get very, very often the question like, how do we fit everything together? Yeah, and where to start? Yeah, and you mentioned before this kind of minimal viable product. Yeah, and for certain organizational changes, you need to make a minimal viable organizational change or setup. Yeah, and you start smaller. You gain experience, you learn, you see what works well, you see which mistakes you make, and then you kind of further develop, but in a fast manner. But fully agreed, there is a vacuum out in the market with our customers, like, but how are we doing this all now? What is our recommendation? What is the best practice?
Well, you've given us a great closing for our conversation. Amar, I want to thank you for being with us. Andy, it's been a wonderful opportunity to be your partner here for these 3 episodes.
Thank you, Ulfi. Thank you, Andreas.
So PTC and Accenture are investing together in this idea that Amarnath referred to, which he's called colloquially the KPI control tower, which is for all of us trying to help our clients make sense of all of these consolidating requirements and suppliers. If that's a topic of interest to you, I invite you to click on one of the links on our website. We'll be happy to provide you the updates as to where we stand on those investments. For now, thank you for joining us. We've really enjoyed this series, sharing the big picture of software-defined everything, how the European teams kind of cut their teeth and led the way in luxury vehicles, and now the changes that are coming back to the U.S. Thank you all for listening, and thanks for being part of our podcast.
Thank you, Ulfi. Thank you, Andreas.